Hey YouTube, Cam here with another fragrance review. I know it's been a little while, appreciate your patience. Wanted to review yet another fragrance that's not very heavily reviewed on YouTube. Doesn't seem like it's very talked about in the fragrance community. The only other video on YouTube that I've seen on this particular fragrance was a street scents that Al did. You know, he did a really good job. But I felt like this is one that really needed a full review. Kind of like with Carnal Flower. The only thing that was out there for Carnal Flower, as far as I could tell, was the Katie Puckrick video. Was about 2 minutes long, and she did a decent job, but she didn't really talk about the fact that, hey, by the way, this is a unisex fragrance. This is something that guys can wear as well, and it's great. Kind of the same thing with this this New York Amber. New York Amber, by the way. Sorry, that's what I'm reviewing today. There's the bottle. Okay, just a standard Bond number 9 bottle. Really good looking bottle. Here's the box. Okay, don't know how well you can see that. I've got a window behind the camera. I'm not sure if it's casting a glare on the plastic that's around the box. So I'll kind of turn it a little bit, and hopefully you can see the box well enough like that. But anyway, like I was saying, kind of like with the Carnal Flower, the only thing that I saw on this was one other video. It was Al. It was a street sense, and he made some comments that made it sound like he really felt that this was kind of a feminine fragrance, that it comes off rather feminine. He sprayed it on the woman who was his subject in that particular episode, if you will, and she said, you know what, I could see this on a guy. So because this is unisex, because a guy can pull this off, I definitely wanted to review it, and also because it's a great fragrance. It's a beautiful fragrance. It's so nice that it was worth spending what we spent on this. My wife and I both really enjoy this particular fragrance. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't have spent the money on it that we did. I guess I'll start with what you're going to pay for this particular fragrance. This is not something you can find heavily discounted online. Because of that, my wife and I just went to Nordstrom's and picked up a bottle. You get fresh, quality juice. So why not if you're not going to get a good discount online? You're going to pay for a 50 ml bottle probably about $250, $260 US. For 100 ml, you're probably going to pay about $330, $340 US. So it's pricey. Why is it pricey? Well, not just because it's a Bond number 9. There are a number of Bond number 9s that are significantly cheaper than that. A lot of it has to do with the ingredients. This has oud in it. Oud is not cheap. Oud's an expensive ingredient. It has saffron in it. Saffron's not entirely cheap either. So there's some things in this that are not cheap ingredients. But on to the review. This particular fragrance was released in 2011, and the notes. Let's talk a little bit about some of the notes. White musk, saffron, sandalwood, amber, rose, oud, pepper. Those are some of the notes. Those aren't all of them. Now, what do I get out of this? I pretty much get, I don't know, what I would say is just, 3 notes for the most part, just very, very, well blended together. I get amber, and it is not a sweet amber. It's not the typical amber that you're used to smelling. It's definitely resinous, but it is not sweet. And then I get rose, plenty of rose in this, and I get oud. And they're all very well blended together. Now, I would say that this is a really good entry-level oud fragrance. If you're somebody who hasn't had a lot of exposure to oud is a challenging note. Oud can be something that takes some time to warm up to as you expose yourself to a number of different oud fragrances. And I just really don't see, Montal Black Oud or Bond number 9's New York Oud. Things like that being, great entry-level oud fragrances, because the oud is pretty darn powerful in both of those two particular fragrances. But in this, it's not super powerful. It's there, absolutely it's there, but it's so well blended with the other notes that at times you won't even smell the oud. What you'll smell is the oud adding almost a little bit of a soapiness to the overall smell, if you will. You know, it is somewhat of a soapiness. Now, after you've had this on for hours and hours, you know, as it dries down, oud is actually one of the main notes you'll get at that point, but it's still not overpowering. It's not super strong or offensive or anything like that. As far as longevity and projection are concerned, really good longevity, 12 plus hours. You should get 12 plus hours out of this. Really good projection. I wore this on Sunday, and my wife and I were coming home from the in-laws, you know, from dinner at the in-laws. I'd already had it on at that point over 12 hours. My wife's in the passenger seat of the car. She's a good 1.5 to 2 feet away from me, and she could still smell this stuff, okay? So if it's still projecting 1.5 to 2 feet 12 plus hours later, as far as I'm concerned, that's good projection. You know, it does a good job in that category. Decent sillage, at least for the first little while. Sillage and projection, you know, just to make the distinction, I think a lot of times they seem to be used interchangeably, even though they're not the same thing. I guess to clarify, you know, projection is, of course, what's, you know, it's your scent bubble, right? And you might be wearing something that's got a, you know, a 3-foot scent bubble, and so somebody who's inside that scent bubble, you know, as you're talking to them or you're near them, you know, they're going to be able to smell what you're wearing. But as you leave, that scent bubble goes with you, and they can't necessarily smell the fragrance anymore. However, if you leave the room, if you leave the area, and they can still smell you, that is sillage. Okay, sillage is the scent particles you leave behind. It's the trail you leave behind. Projection is kind of the bubble, and the bubble is following you around, but what you're leaving behind is the sillage. So hopefully that's helpful to some of you who might be wondering, well, you know, what's the difference? I hear them used, and I don't know the difference between the two. So decent sillage for the first little while, really good longevity and projection. There you go. As far as what I would rate this, I would give an overall rating of 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, I don't want any of you to think, oh no, he just gave it an 8. That means it's not worth my time for what he told me the price was. No, an 8's really good. An 8's, like I said, I mean, my wife and I liked this stuff enough to buy it, okay? That should say something. An 8 for me is a really good rating. I want to put this in perspective for you. Let's take, you know, Mark's scale. Mark tends to rate things on a scale of 1 to 10 as well. And a lot of the things that Mark would give a 9 or a 10, I would give an 8 or a 9. So hopefully that puts things in perspective. Obviously, Mark has great taste. The things he's giving 9s and 10s are usually, you know, pretty darn good fragrances. So if he's giving it a 9 or a 10, and I'd give the same fragrance an 8 or a 9, that must mean an 8 on my scale is a pretty darn good rating. And it is. To me, that's kind of the dividing line. If I give something a 7, it's good. Good, solid fragrance. If I give it an 8, it's really good. Anything above that is just, you know, even better. So really good fragrance. 8, absolutely worth sampling. You know, sniff it out. Get yourself a sample. Try it multiple times. You might not love it the first time, but you might enjoy it even more the second or the third or the fourth time. So get it. Wear it a little bit. See if you can pick out that oud note. Like I said, once it dries down, you know, you should definitely be able to pick out that oud note. And for the first while, because of how well it's blended, it'll just be adding, you know, maybe some soapiness. But great fragrance. Absolutely recommend that you try it. Thanks so much. Rate, comment, subscribe. More reviews to come.